My sister hit me with a cast iron skillet because I wouldn't co-sign her car loan. She smirked. Consider it interest. Dad just rolled his eyes. Mom sighed. She's just stressed. I wiped the counter, slid a sealed folder across, and said, okay. Minutes later, my attorney FaceTimed as officers arrived. My sister muttered through cracked lips, you always were the quiet one. The sound a cast iron skillet makes when it connects with your shoulder blade is a sickening, wet thud followed by a high, metallic ring that seems to vibrate right through your bones. For a split second, there's no pain, just a profound, hollow shock. It's the kind of shock that sucks all the air out of the room, silencing the ticking clock on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator, even the frantic beating of your own heart. Then, the pain hits. It's not a sharp sting. It's a deep, blooming fire, a white-hot supernova that explodes from the point of impact and radiates through every nerve ending in your body. The world tilted, the beige kitchen tiles rushing up to meet me as I crumpled to the floor. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard my sister Jessica's voice dripping with a casual, venomous satisfaction. Consider that interest. My father, Richard, who had been watching the whole exchange from his armchair in the living room, just rolled his eyes as if this were a minor inconvenience, a boring rerun of a show he'd seen too many times. My mother, Helen, rushed forward, her face a mask of concern. But she didn't rush to me. She went to Jessica, placing a soothing hand on her arm. Jessica, honey, calm down, she cooed, before turning her gaze to me, still gasping for breath on the floor. Qley, honestly, she's just stressed. Not a single person asked if I was okay. The fire in my shoulder was nothing compared to the glacial ice that was spreading through my chest. I lay there for a moment, letting the pain and their indifference wash over me, cementing a decision I had made a long, long time ago. This was it. This was the end. I pushed myself up, my movement slow, deliberate. Every muscle screamed in protest. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. The silence that fell over the room was heavier than the skillet that now lay a few feet away from me. I could feel their confusion, their unease. They were used to my tears, my quiet pleas for them to just stop. They didn't know what to do with this cold, empty calm. I walked to the kitchen counter, my arm hanging uselessly at my side. I grabbed a paper towel, wiped a small smear of something, gravy maybe, from the pristine white laminate where I had been standing. Then, I reached into my bag, which was sitting on a kitchen chair, and pulled out a thick, sealed manila folder. I slid it across the polished granite of the island, right into the center of the space between them. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. I looked my mother, my father, and my sister in the eyes, my own expression unreadable. Okay, I said. The word was quiet, but it echoed in the silence like a gunshot. Okay, what? Jessica sneered, though her bravado was starting to fray around the edges. As if on cue, my phone, sitting face up on the counter, lit up and began to vibrate. The screen read, FaceTime call from David Davies. I answered it, angling the phone so the camera captured the whole scene. A man in a sharp suit, his office visible behind him, filled the screen. Hello, David, I said, my voice steady. You're on speaker. Everyone's here. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Two sharp, authoritative chimes that cut through the tension. My dad grunted, annoyed at the interruption, and lumbered towards the door. When he opened it, two uniformed police officers were standing on the porch, their expressions grim and professional. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father froze in the doorway. Jessica's face, which had been twisted in a smirk just moments before, drained of all color. It was a beautiful, cinematic moment of pure, unadulterated panic. One of the officers stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room and landing on me, then on the skillet on the floor. Ma'am, are you Qley? He asked, his voice gentle. I nodded, a single, sharp movement. We received a call from your attorney, Mr. Davies, citing a prearranged distress signal. He stated there was an assault in progress at this address and has provided us with a live audio feed of the last 10 minutes. The world seemed to slow down as the second officer walked over to my sister. He spoke the words she had spent her entire life believing she would never hear. Jessica, you are under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon. As they cuffed her, she finally broke. She started screaming, thrashing, a wild animal caught in a trap of her own making. My mother was sobbing, pleading with the officers, telling them it was all a misunderstanding, a family spat. My father just stood there, looking utterly useless, his authority gone. Through it all, I remained silent, as they led a struggling Jessica past me, her face now puffy and red, her lipstick smeared. She locked eyes with me. The hatred in them was potent enough to burn. She muttered through cracked, trembling lips, her voice a venomous hiss. You always were the quiet one. And in that moment, she finally understood. She was right, I was the quiet one. They just never realized that the quiet ones are the ones you should be afraid of. The quiet ones are the ones who listen, who watch, who document, who plan. To understand how we got here, how a fight over a car loan ended with my sister in handcuffs and my family imploding on a quiet Sunday evening, you have to understand the toxic ecosystem that I was raised in. I'm Qley, I'm 25. I have a good job in data analysis, a career I chose because I find comfort in numbers, in the objective, unemotional truth of data. I pay my own bills, I have a credit score I guard like a dragon guards its hoard, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the family's resident ghost. The quiet one, the easy one, the low-maintenance child who never made waves. My sister Jessica is 28 going on 16. She is the golden child, the sun around which our family has always orbited, a blazing, chaotic star that demands constant attention and burns anyone who gets too close. She's loud, impulsive, and has the financial literacy of a toddler in a candy store. My mother, Helen, is her chief enabler, a woman who has built a career out of papering over Jessica's disastrous life choices with a never-ending stream of excuses. She's just finding her way. She has such a creative spirit. She's just a little stressed. My father, Richard, is a man of quiet, simmering rage. He's a passive participant in the family drama until he's not. His silence is a threat, and his rare, volcanic explosions of anger taught me early on to make myself as small and invisible as possible. The car was just the latest chapter in a long, sordid saga of entitlement. Jessica wanted a brand new, top-of-the-line SUV, the kind with a price tag that looked like a phone number. An SUV she couldn't possibly afford. Her credit was a smoking crater, the result of years of maxed-out credit cards, unpaid medical bills for a series of cosmetic procedures, and a string of jobs she'd quit because her boss didn't appreciate her genius. So naturally, she didn't ask me to co-sign the loan. She demanded it. It was presented as my duty, my familial obligation, the toll I had to pay for the crime of being financially responsible. The confrontation happened, as it always did, at Sunday dinner. It was my mother's sacred ritual, the one time a week she could assemble her cast of characters and pretend we were a normal, happy family from a television commercial. I knew it was coming. Jessica had been texting me all week, her messages escalating from wheedling to demanding to outright hostile. I had calmly and firmly said no each time. I explained that co-signing would tether my financial future to her recklessness, that it would jeopardize my own long-term plans to save for a down payment on a condo. Her response was a string of laughing emojis, followed by, lol, condo can wait. This is important. At dinner, she cornered me between the salad and the main course. So, she began, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, have you thought any more about the car? The dealership is holding it for me, but I need to get the paperwork done by Tuesday. I took a slow sip of water, buying myself a moment. Jessica, I've already given you my answer. I'm sorry, but I can't do it. Can't or won't, she snapped, her voice sharp. Look at you, little Miss Perfect, with your fancy job and your little spreadsheets. You could afford the whole damn car for me if you wanted to. It's not like you have a life or anything to spend your money on. My mother jumped in, right on cue. Qley, don't be so difficult. Your sister needs this. Her old car is unreliable. I worry about her driving it. Her old car is unreliable because she hasn't had the oil changed in 2 years and she treats it like a rolling garbage can. I stated flatly, the truth a foreign object in this house of fiction. Speedos. That's not the point, my mother insisted, her cheeks flushing. The point is, family helps family. She's under a lot of stress at her new job. She started that job 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. That's when Jessica's tactics shifted from guilt to outright nastiness. You know, you're so selfish. You've always been selfish. You think you're better than us just because you went to college and got a boring desk job. You have no idea what it's like in the real world. I just looked at her. I live in the real world, Jessica. In the real world, actions have consequences. You don't get a new toy just because you throw a tantrum. And that's when she threw the tantrum. The screaming, the crying, the accusations. It was a well-rehearsed performance, and it culminated in her grabbing that skillet. But what she didn't know was that this wasn't just about a car. This was about a lifetime of this. This was about the 5-figure sum she'd borrowed from me over the years. A debt my mother dismissed with a wave of her hand. Oh, Qley, don't be so petty. You know she's good for it. It was about the time in high school when she stole our grandmother's heirloom locket, the one thing I had of hers, and pawned it for concert tickets. When our parents found out, after I'd torn the house apart looking for it, I was the one who got screamed at for being careless and for not watching her closely enough. Jessica just got a mild lecture about being more discreet. I never saw the locket again. It was about every achievement of mine that was downplayed, every failure of hers that was excused. When I graduated from university with honors, we went out for pizza. When Jessica got a certificate for completing a 2-week bartending course, my parents threw her a lavish party. I was the family ATM, the built-in scapegoat, the emotional punching bag. The decision to start fighting back wasn't a sudden epiphany. It was a slow, quiet burn that started on my 18th birthday. That was the day Jessica borrowed the birthday money I'd been saving for a new computer and used it to go on a weekend trip with her friends. When I confronted her, she laughed in my face. My parents told me I needed to learn to share. That night, I went online and opened my own bank account at a different bank. It was my first secret, my first act of self-preservation. I started secretly siphoning my earnings from my part-time job into it. I started building my escape plan. The folder I slid across the counter was the culmination of that 7-year plan. For the past year, as Jessica's demands and behavior had grown more erratic, I had been meticulously documenting everything. Every threatening text message was screenshotted and saved to a secure encrypted cloud drive. Every time she called me, screaming and demanding money, I let it go to voicemail, saved the audio file, and had it transcribed. My state has one-party consent laws for recording conversations, and I had become an expert at quietly hitting the record button on my phone before entering any potentially volatile situation with my family. Inside that folder were printouts of the text messages, their venomous words stark in black and white. There were the transcripts of the most damning voicemails. There was a detailed spreadsheet tracking every dollar she had taken from me, with dates, the flimsy excuses she'd given, and a column marking repaid that was entirely blank. There were photos of my belongings she had accidentally broken in fits of rage. A laptop screen cracked after I refused to give her money, a favorite vase shattered against a wall, a pair of expensive headphones snapped in two. It was a comprehensive, undeniable portfolio of her abuse and my parents' complicity. Before I left for dinner that night, I had a feeling it would be the night. The energy in her texts was different, more desperate, more dangerous. So I took a precaution. I have an app on my phone that can be activated by a coded text message. It starts recording audio and video from my phone and sends a live encrypted feed to a designated contact. That contact was David Davies, a lawyer I had put on retainer 2 months prior. I had found him through a women's shelter I'd been quietly donating to. He specialized in domestic abuse cases. The initial consultation with him was the first time I had told the whole story to a stranger, and the first time I was met not with judgment or disbelief, but with calm, professional validation. We had set up the system for just this kind of emergency. The distress text I sent him from my pocket while Jessica was starting her tirade was simple. The oven is preheated. So when Jessica swung that skillet, she wasn't just attacking her quiet little sister. She was attacking a woman who had spent years gathering evidence, a woman who had a lawyer on speed dial, a woman who was recording every single second of it. She thought she was delivering a final, punishing blow. In reality, she was just walking straight into a perfectly laid trap. The hours after Jessica's arrest were a surreal blur of adrenaline, throbbing pain, and a strange, hollow sense of victory. The police were professional and surprisingly gentle with me. They took my statement in the quiet of the dining room, while other officers secured the crime scene in the kitchen. They photographed the massive, rapidly darkening bruise on my shoulder and back and made sure I had a safe place to go. I called my best friend, Sarah, my voice shaking for the first time that night. She was at my parents' house in under 20 minutes, her face a thundercloud of protective fury as she swept me into a hug and led me out to her car, ignoring my mother's tearful pleas from the doorway. As Sarah drove me to her apartment, my phone, which the police had returned to me, began to explode. It was a relentless digital assault from my parents, a desperate attempt to regain control. First came the text messages. Mom, Qley, you need to call me right now. You have to tell the police this was a mistake. You're destroying this family. Mom, your sister is in a jail cell because of you. Do you understand that? A jail cell. She's terrified. How could you be so cruel? After everything we've done for you, you are a selfish, ungrateful child. Dad, fix this. Now. Mom, I can't believe you would do this to your own sister. She made a mistake. She was stressed. Family forgives. You are choosing to do this. This is all on you. I didn't reply. I just read them. Each message a fresh twist of the knife. Each word confirming that I had done the absolute right thing. They weren't worried about me. They weren't horrified that one of their children had physically attacked the other with a weapon. They were just furious that their perfect, dysfunctional world had been shattered, that their precious Jessica was finally facing a consequence she couldn't scream her way out of, and that I was the one who had finally broken the unspoken rules. Then came the voicemails. My mother's were a hysterical blend of pleading, sobbing, and guilt-tripping. Qley, honey, please pick up the phone. We can sort this out. You don't have to press charges. We're family. Think about Jessica's future. You'll ruin her life. Is that what you want? To ruin your own sister's life over a silly argument? She didn't mean it. You know she didn't. My father's was far more chilling. It was one long, heavy silence, followed by a low voice that dripped with a lifetime of suppressed menace. You have no idea what you've just done. You've made a very big mistake. There will be consequences. Sarah listened to them with me in the quiet of her car, her hand gripping my good shoulder. Block them, she said, her voice firm as steel. Right now. You don't need to hear this poison. Not tonight, not ever again. And so I did. With a few taps on the screen, I silenced the voices that had dictated and dominated my life for 25 years. The silence that followed was deafening, but it was a peaceful silence. It was the sound of freedom. The next morning, David Davies, my lawyer, met me at a coffee shop near Sarah's apartment. He was exactly the person you want in your corner. Calm, methodical, and radiating an aura of quiet competence that soothed my frayed nerves. He had already seen the police report and the evidence I had provided. First of all, Qley, I want to say you are incredibly brave, he started, his eyes kind but serious. What you did last night took immense courage. Now let's talk about what happens next. Jessica has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon, which is a felony. Given her lack of a prior record, she'll likely be released on bail later today, but the judge has already issued a temporary emergency restraining order. She is not to contact you or come within 500 feet of you, your home, or your place of work. He explained the legal process, the arraignment, the possibility of a plea bargain or a trial. "The evidence is overwhelming," he said, tapping the copy of my folder on the table between us. "The audio recording of the assault is the nail in the coffin. Their attempts to pressure the police last night claiming it was just an accident and that you were unstable were also noted in the report. They are not helping her case. My physical injuries were painful but not severe. A trip to urgent care confirmed a deep tissue contusion and a mild shoulder sprain. The doctor gave me a sling, which felt like a badge of honor, and some strong painkillers, but the physical pain was a dull, manageable ache compared to the emotional turmoil. I was grieving. I was grieving the family I wished I had, the mother who should have protected me, the father who should have stood up for me, the sister I should have been able to trust. My parents, unable to reach me directly, escalated their campaign. They started calling Sarah, leaving her rambling, angry messages which she played for me with a grimace. They even tried to friend her on social media. They were trying to find my weakness, a crack in my resolve. They deployed what I later learned in therapy is called an extinction burst, the desperate, frantic flailing of an abuser when they realize they've lost control and their old tactics are no longer working. They tried to paint me as the aggressor, the mentally unstable one. They told the police I had been acting strangely for months, but it was all useless. The evidence was objective. The recording didn't lie, the skillet didn't lie, the bruise on my back didn't lie. For the first time in my life, the truth was on my side, and it was backed by the full weight of the law. I spent the next few days holed up in Sarah's guest room, healing. I was physically and emotionally exhausted, but underneath it all, a new feeling was taking root: peace. The constant, low-grade anxiety that had been my lifelong companion was starting to recede. The hypervigilance, the need to constantly read the room and manage my family's moods was gone. I was safe, and I had done it myself. The quiet one had finally roared. The wheels of justice turned slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, victim witness counseling, and a crash course in the labyrinthine ways of the court system. Jessica, faced with the mountain of irrefutable evidence against her, especially the crystal clear audio of her attacking me and my parents, subsequent clumsy attempts at a cover-up, had no choice. Her court-appointed lawyer, a weary-looking man who seemed to have seen it all, advised her that going to trial would be a spectacular act of self-immolation. So she took a plea deal. I insisted on being in the courtroom on the day of her sentencing. I needed to see it through to the end. I needed to witness the final consequence. Sarah sat beside me, her hand a warm, steady presence on my arm. My parents were there, sitting on the opposite side of the aisle, looking older and smaller than I had ever seen them. My mother was weeping silently into a tissue. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw tight with a rage that had nowhere to go. Jessica stood before the judge, looking small and pathetic in an ill-fitting blazer she had probably borrowed. She refused to look at me. The judge, a woman with a stern face and intelligent eyes that missed nothing, read the terms of the sentence in a clear, unwavering voice. 2 years of probation, a mandatory 52-week anger management program, and full restitution for the victim's medical bills and legal fees. Then came the most important part, the words I had been waiting to hear. Furthermore, the judge continued, looking directly at Jessica, her voice leaving no room for argument. The court is granting the victim's request for a permanent restraining order. You are to have no contact, direct or indirect, with your sister Qley for the rest of your life. Do you understand? Jessica mumbled a barely audible, "Yes, Your Honor." A permanent restraining order. The words were the most beautiful I had ever heard. It was a legal document that validated everything I had endured. It was a shield forged in the fire of my own pain and perseverance. It was the end. The irony was not lost on me. Jessica's obsession with her credit score, with getting that car loan, had now resulted in a felony conviction on her permanent record. Getting a loan for a cup of coffee would be a challenge for her now, let alone a luxury SUV. The universe, it turns out, has a dark and poetic sense of humor. Of course, my family didn't see it that way. The restraining order didn't stop them from trying to get around it. They sent relatives, flying monkeys, as my therapist now calls them, to try and talk to me. Aunts and uncles I hadn't heard from in years suddenly called, leaving long, rambling voicemails telling me I was tearing the family apart, that I needed to learn to forgive and forget, that blood is thicker than water. I blocked their numbers, one by one, a cleansing ritual of digital boundary setting. The most brazen attempt came about a month after the sentencing. My father showed up at my office building. He didn't get past the lobby. Our receptionist, a wonderful woman named Brenda, called me, her voice low and concerned. "Qley, your father is here. He's asking to see you." I felt a jolt of pure ice water in my veins, but my voice was steady when I replied. "Brenda, please call building security. He is not allowed to be here." I watched on the security camera feed as 2 guards calmly and professionally escorted him out. He didn't cause a scene. He just left, but the message was clear. "We know where you are." That was the final push I needed. I broke my lease, packed up my life into a dozen cardboard boxes, and moved to a new apartment in a different part of the city. A place with a doorman and better security. I didn't tell anyone in my family my new address. It was a fresh start in every sense of the word. My life now is quiet, but it's a different kind of quiet. It's not the tense, fearful silence of my childhood, where I was constantly trying to make myself invisible to avoid setting someone off. It's a peaceful, chosen silence. It's the silence of a Sunday morning with a cup of tea and a good book, with no fear of a phone call that will ruin my day. It's the silence of my own thoughts, clear and uninterrupted by the noise of guilt or fear or obligation. I'm in therapy, working through a quarter-century of complex trauma. It's the hardest work I've ever done. Some days are harder than others. There are days when the grief is a physical weight on my chest. But for the first time, I feel like I'm building a life that is truly my own, on my own terms. I'm learning to set boundaries, not just with others, but with myself. I'm learning that no is a complete sentence, not a negotiation. I'm learning that I am worthy of peace and safety. The quiet one finally found her voice. It wasn't a shout or a scream. It was the quiet click of a record button. It was the soft slide of a folder across a table. It was the calm, steady word, okay. It was the radical act of choosing myself over the people who were supposed to choose me first. To anyone out there reading this, to anyone living in that same tense, fearful silence, your silence is not weakness. It can be your strength. It's the time you use to observe, to document, to plan your escape. Your boundaries are real and valid, and no one, not even family, has the right to cross them. You are not alone. Thank you for listening.